This is episode 15 with Craig Wilkinson.
Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, the show that empowers you to become the hero of your life's journey. With your host, Brian Tier.
Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast. We're up to episode 15 and today I'm very honored to be welcoming on a special guest, Craig Wilkinson. Now, Craig is a TEDx speaker, an author, a dad and masculinity expert, founder of Father a Nation, and more personally to me, someone I call a mentor. Now, I first came across Craig through his involvement and my involvement with TEDx Cape Town, and later attended a talk of his. And in this talk, Craig spoke about how to live an excellent life. And I thought it would be a perfect message to share right here on the podcast with the Quarter Life Comeback listeners. Now, this interview is packed with valuable, actionable content. So I decided once again to split it into two parts, so as not to keep the episodes too long. And I just know you're going to find this really informative, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I did sitting down to chat with one of my mentors. Now, in this episode, we're going to touch on what it actually means to be excellent and what it doesn't, why we settle for mediocrity and how to get out of that, the 10 keys for achieving excellence in our lives, Craig's awesome exercise for overcoming self-doubt and building self-belief. And I challenge you, everyone out there listening, to take this challenge and do this exercise. How to eliminate bad habits and start adopting healthier ones. And how to set higher standards for what we can achieve in our life. If you like this episode, make sure you go check the show notes out at briantier.com/015. And I'm sure you'll dig it. Make sure you come back for part 2 next week. But for now, let's go and hang out with Craig Wilkinson. Welcome back, everyone. And today I'm very excited to welcome a personal mentor of mine to the Quarter Life Comeback. And it's none other than Craig Wilkinson. Craig, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, good to be with you.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. So, Craig, I first came across you through TEDx Cape Town and then a talk you went to, which we'll touch on a bit later in the interview,
Yes.
that I went to, sorry. But before we get into all that, I wonder if you could share with listeners what your quarter life years looked like.
Gosh, that's quite a poignant question because my quarter life years could have been a heck of a lot better. I arrived at adulthood with not a great understanding of self, not a great sense of confidence in who I was. So they were kind of finding myself, just going with the flow, a little bit more default than I would like them to have been had I been more aware in terms of planning and applying some of the excellence principles we're going to talk about later. So they were successful, they were good, but they weren't nearly as optimal as what they could have been. Had I known certain things that I know now. And I guess that's the benefit of going through the storm of life, because you come out a lot wiser and you're able to help others not make the same mistakes you did.
Yeah, and it's never a perfect journey either.
It never is, no.
Everyone gets there somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, indeed.
So, Craig, you wrote the Dad book and you run Father a Nation, and you have 2 kids yourself who are in their 20s, sort of the quarter life years. So, yes. I think you're a perfect candidate to speak about some of these things we're going to touch on. So, before we get into how do we achieve excellence, I wonder if you could just share a bit of what is excellence, so we have some sort of context before we dive into it.
A reference point. It's a great question. I mean, and because for me, there's a lot of misconceptions about what excellence is, and a lot of people are scared of it. They think, excellence is for someone else, and it's something that's unachievable, and it's But really, I mean, there are a few things that it is. Firstly, excellence is it's just living life to the full, and it sounds cliched, but it's just being fully alive, fully who you are. So whatever potential you have, whatever passions you have, whatever desires, living those out. So it's about living life well and life to the full, and anybody can do that. Secondly, it's uniquely you. Excellence doesn't look the same for any two people. Just like your fingerprints are totally different. Your passions and your unique set of skills and what it is that you want to achieve in life and your purpose is different. So for you, living life to the full and being excellent is different from anyone else's, and we can't compare. So it's very unique. The third thing, excellence, is that it's all of you. A lot of people excel in one particular area. So, I like to use the example of a guy who goes to gym and he's got this massive upper body, but he's got these skinny little asterisk-like legs, And, that's not, that's excellence upper body, but what about the lower body? And a lot of our lives are like that. There's the physical, there's the emotional, there's the spiritual, there's the relational, there's the financial. There's all these aspects of life. And excelling at one at the expense of others is not really excellence. It's probably more like obsession. And so excellence needs to be all of us. The fourth thing for me with excellence is that excellence is not just for you. And this is, I'm a passionate proponent of fatherhood and masculinity, and that's a real mission and passion of mine. But if you're really living an excellent life, it's going to impact those around you, and it's going to impact the world, and it's going to impact your family. So the benefit of excellence is not just for ourselves, although we live life to the full, but it has a big impact on the world around us. And I think that's the beauty of it, because it becomes a purpose and a passion-driven exercise. The fifth thing for me is that it's humble. And I love the definition of humility, which says that true humility is the willingness to be known for exactly who you are. And we often have a false humility. We kind of say, oh, no, I'm not that good at that, or, But the whole thing of humility is to say, you know what, I am this, and I'm brilliant at that, and I'm so grateful that I'm gifted and brilliant, and I'm going to be that, and I'm not going to be shy about it. But it's also the realization that, I'm not so good at that, and I'm going to network with other people around. They can bring the excellence in that area. So there's the humility. And I think finally, there are three more things really, but it's joy. A lot of people excel in a sport or a particular area, but there's no joy in their life. It's just a gritty, grindy, determined push through, and they burn out. And there's got to be a sense of joy, a sense of wow. Like the eagle flying. I'm made to fly, and when I'm flying, I love it. There's that sense of joy. It's also, excellence is not perfection. A lot of people shy away from excellence because they think, you know what, it's not for me, it's for the other person. They can achieve it, I can't. It's not perfection. We all bumble along. You said earlier, it never works out entirely exactly as you plan. I love that thing that says, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. There's an element of that, and we've got to be open to the mystery of it, and to sometimes failing and screwing up, and that's absolutely cool. It's being, and finally, Brian, it's authentic. It's got to be real. If you excel in something that your dad wants you to excel in, for instance, and it's not what you want to excel in, is that really excelling? You got to find what is me, the authentic me, and be that, and be real in it. So that for me sums up excellence, and it's something every single person can achieve.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I love that definition encompassing those points, and something you touched on right in the beginning and at the end now, which is a perfect segue into my next question, is it's something that everyone can achieve, and we all have our unique passions and interests and abilities. But the sad reality, if we look around, and I think often the cause of a lot of quarter life crises, is that people have these abilities and passions, but they're still sitting in the same place and settling in a way, and settling for mediocrity. Why do you think we tend to do that, and how do we get out of that?
Yeah, I love that question, because it's so sad. We've all got something so amazing to bring to the world, and most of us don't. The opposite of excellence is mediocrity. It's embracing what's okay but not great. So I think the first thing we do is we compare ourselves to others. And, it's the Facebook syndrome. The research now shows that people who've been on Facebook for a while and looked at it, they come off mostly feeling mildly depressed. And the reason is they're comparing our lives to other lives. And so we kind of give up and we say others are better than me and they're having the life and I'm not. It's the whole FOMO, the fear of missing out thing. The second thing is we don't believe we can. It's so true. We don't believe we deserve to. So we will only ever pursue what we deep down inside believe we can achieve and what we deserve to achieve. It's almost like the lonely supermodel syndrome, and it's true. You get beautiful, beautiful women who are lonely. And one of the reasons is that men are too scared. They don't believe that they can, crack a date with a supermodel, and they don't believe deep down they deserve it. There's this sense of sabotage we have in our lives growing up around what we feel we're worthy of and what we feel we deserve to have. And oftentimes we'll sabotage success and achievement because deep down inside, we don't really believe we deserve it. And that's a key deep issue to work on. And the earlier you work on it, the better. The other thing is we fear it because in some ways excelling is a lonely process because you stand out from the crowd. You're excellent. And there's a sense of the crowd mentality wanting you to be one of them. And when you do excel, there's likely to cause jealousy. It can break friendships. You can do things that your parents or your family circle don't agree with. And it's just much easier not to do that and stand out and really pursue passion and vision and dreams. And so there's an element of fear that if I really excel, I'm going to be lonely, or people are going to be jealous of me, or they're not going to like me. And a lot of these things are not conscious, so Brian. They're things that we hold deep inside. The next thing, of course, is it's much easier not to excel. Excellence takes effort and passion and drive and design, and it's a lot easier. People, Tony Robbins, I think, says we're driven by two things. It's the pursuit of the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Yeah. And he said most people, unfortunately, spend more time avoiding pain than pursuing pleasure, and so we kind of, it's a lazier option not to excel. You set your alarm to get up and go to gym or do the run in the morning, and the alarm goes off, and you wake up and you think, no, not today, and you turn it off. It's much easier to be mediocre, isn't it? It takes effort. The other thing is we don't know how to excel. It takes a person who really knows the principle of excellence and how to become fully alive. And that takes a lot of just reading, chatting. And that's what I love what you do, Brian. I mean, you're reaching out and helping quarter lifers to say, you know what, I'm going to equip you with the skills to live your best life. And that's a fantastic mission to do. Finally, I think excellence hasn't been modeled for us often. We grow up in a society which sadly to largely has embraced mediocrity. I call it tolerable mediocrity. And the reason it's tolerable is because if you are living a life that's kind of not much better, but not much worse than those around you, then it's okay. You're cool. You're okay. You're not missing out. But it's mediocre because it's not fully what you can be. And so because we live in that kind of society, when we grow up, we have people around us who are kind of mediocre, and we think, well, that's the standard. That's the norm. So one guy gave a great example. He said he once played a game of pool with someone who wiped him off the table. He was brilliant. And this friend of mine said to him, gosh, you're an amazing player. And he said these interesting words. He said, yes, I'm good. He said, but I'm not the best. And he said, the reason I'm not the best is because I grew up I was mentored by people who were kind of B grade, good, far better than the layperson, but not A grade. And had I grown up around people and been mentored by people who were the top, that would have been my standard. So we need to, and I like what you're doing too, Brian, reaching out to different people who excel in different areas, because what you're doing is you're looking for models, people who can model for you and for your listeners excellence that's beyond what is around them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Craig. I'm loving this interview already. We've spoken about not skipping leg day and picking up hot women.
The two go hand in hand, eh?
That's the only two things to excellence. So I think we can call the interview down. Craig, we mentioned belief, and I think that is part of the sort of the 10 keys to excellence which you speak about. So I think we can dive straight into that now. So for people listening, and they're tired of settling, they do want to start modeling excellence in their life. What are the keys to achieving that?
Okay, great. Yeah, there are probably 10 that I'll go through briefly. And the first one is self-belief, because our sense of self and who we are, what we're worthy of, what we're capable of, is the most fundamental foundation for excellence. Nothing empowers more than self-belief, and nothing restricts us more than self-doubt. And it's worth spending a little time on this, because the sad reality is most of us grew up with a sense of self-doubt.
Yeah.
As we grow up, we have questions, and boys and girls, when they're growing up, have different questions that they ask and they ask us, interesting enough, mostly of their father. The father's role is very much, and an older man's role is very much to call out and validate younger men and younger women. So the question on a boy's heart is, us as men all want to be powerful. We do. We want to know that we've got what it takes to be a man, or to achieve, or to crack it. So we're driven by the need for someone to validate our sense of, I've got what it takes. Not powerful to run over other people, but powerful to live a life and to be what it is to be a man. Women are a lot more relational than men. Of course, they also want power, and they are powerful. But a woman, because of her sense of wanting to really be the glue, and women are more about love. And so a woman grows up with a question, a young girl grows up with a question on her heart: Dad, am I lovely? Am I worth pursuing? Can I bring the magic of a feminine soul to the world? And, sadly, Brian, we often grow up and we enter adulthood, and I speak very much from personal experience, without having had that question answered. So there's a sense of inadequacy in men and women. I'm not actually powerful enough. I don't really have what it takes. I'm a little inadequate. And we often don't consciously verbalize that or even aware of it, but there is that sense. And that's why you find men posing and posturing, and also men kind of escaping into all kinds of different escapes. And you have women, the beauty industry of women is just massive, women wanting to be beautiful. And so this issue of self-belief, it's something that one needs to really work on, because that's the platform for success.
Yeah, I do agree that this is a topic that's worth sort of staying on for a while. And I know I've battled with a lot of self-doubt myself. And even in starting this podcast, I try to come up with every excuse imaginable. And until at some stage I said I need X and Y equipment and
yes.
all that sort of stuff. And then another mentor of mine, Karen, she actually said to me, like, Brian, that's just a load of BS. You know that you don't need that to get started.
Yeah. Believe.
And once you take that first step, I found from personal experience, you kind of overrule your brain and show yourself that you can do it.
Absolutely.
But I wonder if you had some other tips for how we start cultivating some self-belief, because I know a lot of people do struggle with this.
Yeah, look, it's a matter of looking in the mirror and just asking yourself some hard questions. What do I believe about myself? One of the exercises I love doing with people is to pick 5 people in your life, some family members, some friends, some mentors, etc., and send them an email and say. So if you were doing it, Brian, you'd say the first part of the email would be, what do you like, admire, respect, feel that Brian is really good at, So and you say, please, can you put 10 points? If you can't do 10, do 5, whatever you can. And so they'd say, I like, admire, respect, find amazing about Brian the following things. And then the second part of the email is you say, these are the things about Brian that he could do that would make him a better person. And you look for 5 to 10 points. And it's an astounding exercise, because most of us are able to talk about our faults. But if we have to really talk about our deep strengths and powers and what we're great at, we kind of choke up a bit. But if you get 5, and you can even do more, you can do 10 people. It's a fantastic exercise. And you get them to share with you what they see in you that's great and wonderful. Oftentimes people end up in tears because they get feedback about things that they never saw in themselves. And they start to, and it's about growing into a place of finding honest validation of who you are. You see, what we mostly do is we seek validation in external things. So, and that's the second exercise to go to, is you say, what is it that validates me? Where do I go to feel good about myself? And what things that if they weren't there, I'd feel crap about myself. So with men, it's often money, It's if I've got the right car and I've got enough money, and if I've got the right chick on my side, I feel good about myself. Take those away, what's left? What do I feel? So just begin to get an honest assessment of how you feel about yourself. Ask other people to bring to the party what they see in you that's great and good and wonderful. And then, Brian, there's this thing we have to all do. It's almost a process of refathering ourselves. So I tell fathers when they become dads, I say, this is a parallel journey. You're going to have to raise your kids at the same time, become a whole man whilst you're doing it. And that's a process of refathering and gaining the internal validation that we need, that we didn't get growing up.
I love it. Yeah. And I challenge everyone to do that little exercise of emailing 5 to 10 people. And so let's move on then to the second point. So we've covered belief and self-doubt. What's the next step in our keys to excellence?
The next step is passion. I often say that want power is far greater than willpower. New Year's Eve resolutions often don't work because it's something you would, you think you'd like to do and achieve, eat less, exercise more, whatever the case may be, but it quickly fizzles out. And the reason is you simply don't want it enough. If you want something badly enough, you'll do whatever it takes to get it. And so life has a way of kind of quelling and quenching our passions over time. We often, if you're not validated as a human being, if you're a poet and you grow up with a dad who's an athlete, and he doesn't see you, he doesn't validate who you are as a poet, you start to lose that passion for that and start to think you're not. But if we can reignite our passions and get in touch with our hearts and our desire, desire is such a fantastic gift from God to us, our desires and passions, and they're all different. So getting in touch with what you're passionate about and love doing and desire is the key, because if you love it enough, you're going to do it. If you feel you have to do it, you're going to do it grudgingly and it's going to fizzle out. But if you really want it, you're going to do it. So getting in touch with passion and having passion is the second great step for excellence.
Yeah, and I think also if you love it enough, you'll find a way to make it work.
Absolutely, 100%.
There's people make a living from the weirdest jobs you can imagine, but it's just because if you tell someone you're going to make movies, most people immediately say, well, how are you going to make money from that?
Exactly.
But tell Steven Spielberg that or something like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Passion's the fuel.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what's next in our 10 steps?
Okay, the next one is the power of a habit. And it sounds so simple, but our entire lives are built, it's just a series of habits or things we habitually do. So someone said that excellence is not an act, but it's a habit. So what you consistently do is what you end up becoming. So, I'll give an example. So Brian, you and I are both health conscious. So this is an example I'll use is when I was in my early 20s, I went away on holiday to the coast with a mate of mine, and we were staying in this hotel. And we decided we're going to just do a bit of, we're going to do some sit-ups and a jog every morning. And it was an astounding revelation because by doing sit-ups for 3 minutes every morning, just 3 minutes, the abs started becoming very strong. And if you relate that to every aspect of our lives, if we all have habits, we have sleeping habits, eating habits, drinking habits, reading habits, relationship habits, love-making habits, whatever you do, there's things you habitually do, the way we spend our time. And the absolute key to excellence is if you develop a whole set of the right habits in each area, you will excel. You look at a massive book and you think, geez, how will I get through it? You read 15 minutes a day. By the end of the year, you would have read large volumes of works. If you want to, you think about flexibility. By stretching 5 minutes a day, who hasn't got 5 minutes a day to stretch? You'll become flexible. By just cutting out that fizzy Coke drink every day, you're developing a habit of drinking water instead of Coke. And so if we consistently do the things that lead to success, we'll succeed. If we consistently get into habits that are destructive, we will destroy ourselves. So the power of a habit is unbelievably phenomenal. And that's what successful people do. They have good habits.
And how do you, if someone's listening to this on the other side of the spectrum is, if we have bad habits, how do we get rid of those? Is it a case of picking a healthier habit and executing on it, or
I think so. Yeah. So you look at the positive, you say, well, I want to get, if I want to be in great shape, you start doing stuff that'll get you in great shape. And many of the habits that you had that were detracting from you being in good shape will fall away. So it's a focusing on the positive and the passion. But they all lead from each other. If you really believe that you deserve a life of excellence and you develop a passion for what you really, it becomes quite easy to then, for instance, if you love being fit, gym is not a chore, is it, anymore? It's something you love doing. If you love people and transforming people's lives and you want to do it through podcasts like what you're doing, it stops being work, doesn't it? It becomes a pleasure and a passion, and the habits just start to formulate themselves.
Yeah. Perfect. let's carry on going then. So what's number 4?
Okay, is EQ, emotional intelligence. I mean, it's a word that's been around for a very long time, but essentially, EQ is your ability to be conscious and manage your own emotions in your own life. So it's around self-control and dealing with my emotions, and it's also around being able to manage your interactions with other people well. So I always use the example of a Jerry Springer show. But Jerry Springer show is the epitome of a lack of EQ. You know, the way people they can't handle themselves and they fly off the handle and they just can't control their urges and they crap on each other and they just fight. I mean, that's just the opposite of EQ. I mean, EQ is someone who's able to control themselves and to communicate assertively and to love other people and to be able to share their needs and wants in a way that doesn't affect or dominate other people, but also is not a doormat, you know. So this whole thing around EQ is managing myself well and having good interactions and relationships with other people, crucial to living a life of excellence.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and you've probably experienced this a lot in your work with men and dads, like a lot of people think that showing their emotional side is a weakness, or is going to make them seem, I don't know, less or
right.
It's a funny one.
Yeah.
And I think in your talk, which I originally heard, this step was called love, not fear.
Yes.
But it essentially comes down to the same thing.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so. Yeah, and it's something that often we're not taught growing up, you know, in terms of how to control emotions, you know, cause and effect, action and consequence. These are EQ points that are very crucial to understand and know. Being in control of your feelings, your actions, your attitudes. Yeah.
Yeah, and sort of letting others know when they mean something to you, or
very much so. Communicating. You know, Brené Brown does a lot of work on this. Just the power of vulnerability, and it's a power of just being authentic and real in who I am. And realizing that you are valuable as a human being and other people are valuable as human beings. And in your interactions with them, valuing them and valuing yourself. So never allow yourself to be a doormat, but also never dominate. And don't bottle up stuff. Share it. You know, there's the title of a book I saw the other day. I haven't read the book, but it says, If Men Could Talk. I think it's just such a fantastic title. If men could talk, because we don't want to be vulnerable. And it goes back to what I said earlier, that we have a need to be powerful. Men do. And so if we're vulnerable or share our emotions, we feel like we're not powerful, which is totally incorrect. You know, a man who's powerful is able to share his emotions, and it doesn't take away from him being powerful because he knows who he is.
Yeah, I heard something about this not so long ago, where they asked people in a crowd, like, who of you think that opening up is a strength or weakness? And most people thought it would be a weakness. And then they said, who of you would consider people weak if they chose to open up to you? And no one said that they would consider it a weakness. Yeah. So it's funny.
Interesting. Yeah. I think if you open up to a perfect stranger on a bus and start weeping, that could be a bit of a weakness, but you got to pick, you know, pick and choose.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Craig, what comes next?
The next one is benchmarks, Brian. And it's an interesting one because your benchmark is what you set as the standard. So I'll give you an example. When I was in, what must have been grade 8, I don't know, I was about 12 years old. I was at a school in Botswana, and it was quite a small town, and I could do 30 press-ups. And I was very proud of this because no one else in my class could do that. And then this guy came to town from Zimbabwe, and he could do 100 press-ups. And he completely blew my whole...
As a 12-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. You know, well, he was a little older than me. I think he was 15. But it totally blew my perspective of what a press-up was. I thought, geez, so my benchmark was a certain standard, and but it was a low standard. And so if you really want to excel, what we need to do is look to world-class benchmarks, or benchmarks that are not just within our small circle. And reach out. I mean, what you're doing is a great thing. Reaching out to mentors is because you're saying, well, I need to find benchmarks that are going to challenge me and that are the real marks. There's a fantastic story. I don't actually know if it's true. I've tried to research, but it's a lovely story anyway. It's about this Scottish guy way back when, I don't know, 100 years ago or something, who wanted to be a discus. He wanted to be a discus Olympian, and so he got the dimensions of what the discus was, and he also got the current distances that were the world records. and he made a discus and practiced on his farm in Scotland. And he practiced, and he started off very short of the mark, and then he slowly, with a huge amount of effort, got to the mark. And then he went to the Olympics to compete. And when he got there, they gave him his discus to throw, and he threw it like almost, I think 60 or 70% further than anyone else, and far further than he'd thrown it at home. And what he realized was that the one he was practicing with on his farm was steel. He'd been practicing with a steel, but the discus at the Olympics was steel tipped, but it was wooden, so it was much lighter. And it's an interesting story because it's like the Paul Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile. For many, many years, scientists thought that no human being could run faster than a 4-minute mile. And then I think in 1950 something, Paul Bannister did it. He actually cracked the sub 4-minute mile. Yeah. And in the same year, many, many other people did it. So the benchmark had been pressed up. And as soon as it is, we begin to achieve more. So this whole issue of don't benchmark on mediocrity, benchmark on the best and see if you can achieve that. Even if you don't achieve it and exceed it, you're still aiming for what's considered to be the best.
Yeah, it comes back to when you were speaking about why we settle for mediocrity and the people you surround yourself with. Yeah. Jim Rohn's little average of 5 people you spend the most time with comes up there.
Exactly, 100%.
There you have it, guys. That wraps up part 1 of the interview with Craig. And I just love some of the stuff we've already got into in this part of the interview. And I know you're going to love part 2 even more. One of the things that really stood out for me was when Craig said, excellence is something that all of us can achieve. And I really do believe that. Now, in part 2, if you enjoyed this episode, then definitely go back and check out part 2. We cover the rest of the keys to excellence, as well as what Craig believes to be the biggest challenge and opportunity for quarter lifers today. Now, all the resources and links and everything else we mentioned in this part of the interview, you can grab at briantier.com/015. And if you'd like to subscribe or leave a rating or review on iTunes or get notified of all these episodes as soon as they come out, then you can find out more at quarterlifecomeback.com. Until next week, guys, keep creating your quarter life comeback.
Thanks for listening to the Quarter Life Comeback. Get started today by visiting briantier.com.